That's the American dream. I don't know if you ever heard it put that way. That's how I look at it. The dream is just to leave me alone and let me go.
Welcome back to the Kevin Roberts Show. You know, we've been doing this show for two and a half years. It's been a lot of fun. Every guest has been fantastic. And you know, most of the time we record it behind enemy lines in Washington, D.C. at the great headquarters of Heritage. But you also know, if you've been tuning into this show, that I really like being on location. And it doesn't matter where, and it actually doesn't matter who. But in this case, this week, where and who really do matter. We are here in the great American city of Nashville, Tennessee. It really is one of the great cities of the world. And we're with our friend, and most importantly, a great American patriot, John Rich. John, you're a busy man.
Good to have you, Doctor. Welcome to Nashville.
Thanks, brother. Really appreciate it.
Good to have you.
We're going to talk about your story, but some people who are heritage aficionados, although the audience for this is much broader than that, are probably wondering, why is Roberts talking to John Rich? And why is John Rich talking to Roberts?
Right.
And it started with a conversation we had a few years ago. And we don't have to go into all the details, but you and I hit it off because you had some criticism, which was passed along as a friend, of what's called Conservative Inc., DC-based organizations that needed to, as I like to say, tell people what time it is. And you and I have kept in touch. And I will say, and you also know that I'm a no BS guy, and you are a no BS guy, that you're kind of the North Star about where the country is. And even though you have had a lot of success, which you've earned, you've not lost sight of the fact of where you come from. And that's where we hit it off. So let's start with that. Tell us where John Rich was born, why you do what you do, and we're just going to take it from there.
We'll have a really fancy pedigree. You ready?
I'm ready.
High school diploma. That's it. High school diploma. Nothing fancy in my pedigree. I grew up Amarillo, Texas, up in the Panhandle. My family settled out there in the mid-1800s. They were dirt busters. You know, it's flat as a board up there. It's dry, it's windy. They broke that land. They started farming there. My grandmother, my Granny Rich, probably the greatest female influence in my life, was born during not only the Great Depression, but also the Dust Bowl days in that part of the world, simultaneously going on. And then here comes World War II right after that. So I grew up around people like that. My dad is a prison preacher, preached in a lot of prisons, street preacher, also preached in some churches, but always smaller churches and not for very long because they couldn't handle him every single Sunday.
He was telling the truth.
He just, He did not preach in a manner that would make people comfortable, which I think is a real problem in a lot of American churches, which is I guess maybe another subject, but that was not him. And so you grow up around people like that are focused on what they know they are capable of and what is expected of them and what they expect of themselves, what they're called to do. And under any circumstances, it matters not, they follow that path. They go through, around, over, or under the walls that are put in front of them, because everybody gets those. And they are directional people. They are directional. They are purposeful. And no matter what it is, they come at it till they die. And they never stop. Those are the people I grew up around. So when you've got a high school diploma, I've actually looked at that as somewhat of a benefit to me that I did not go have higher learning, because my thought processes are fairly direct and simple. Not stupid, just very direct and simple. And when I look at complicated situations, especially in our country or in politics, I have a very direct, simple approach to how I refer to that situation and what I would like to see done about it. And so that brings in some interesting people into my life like you. It also runs a lot of people out, which is also fine. You know, one thing I learned growing up from parents and grandparents like that is if everybody likes what you have to say, you are not saying it correctly. Somebody somewhere should have a real problem with you. And when you look at the way our country is today, a lot of people on the left, man, if they thought well of me, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So when I get attacked on social media, or people are, walking in a store and somebody says something bad or whatever, I almost get a grin on my face because I know that what I stand for had impact. They didn't like it at all. I didn't do it to make them not like me. I did it because that's how I feel about it. Now I'm an American and I have a right to say it that way. And the fact that they don't like it means I hit the mark. So I think picking up on that from my heritage, my family, is probably a lot of the reason why I am the way I am.
You told me some of that, maybe a lot of that, when we spoke a few years ago. And I think I mentioned to you, because you mentioned the importance of your grandmother, that my grandmother was really important too. And I just mentioned this briefly because I've got a follow-up question. She was from Illinois. She was in the Marine Corps in World War II.
Wow.
4'10", 95 pounds. And let me tell you, she'd whip your ass.
I bet.
I can say that firsthand.
I'm sure.
And she married my grandfather, who was from Louisiana, native Cajun French speaker.
Oh, good Lord.
And that, you talk about a marriage, but great people. And they helped.
That's gasoline and whiskey with a lit match.
Oh, brother. And they were awesome. They were married a very long time. They helped raise me. But like your grandmother providing for you, and it sounded like your other relatives did too, as they did for me, there was never a question that the one expectation in life, regardless of what education would be, what business would be, is that you say what is true and you be willing to stand up for it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how hard your people had to work to break that really difficult land and that difficult climate in the Texas Panhandle, or if it's modern America, but that you have to stand up for truth. And it strikes me that in spite of the fact that tens of millions of Americans have had really important figures in their lives like your grandmother and mine, that maybe as a society we've gotten a little soft.
You think?
Yeah, I think. So what do we do about it?
There's a real danger in people being soft. America was not founded on people that were soft. The world was not saved on the backs of people that were soft back in the 1940s. We've all seen that circle, you know, weak men make bad times make strong men strong, make good times, that whole circle. It's very true. Americans, we've got this little thing called life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. An inalienable right, meaning a right not granted to you by man, but you were born with it by your creator, with a capital C. Mm-hmm. Nobody can take that away from you. Americans should every day, if you're an actual American citizen, you should wake up, jump out of the bed with both fists up and a big smile on your face and go, what do you got for me today? I mean, let's go. There are millions of people, I would say billions of people, if they could snap their fingers and be an American citizen today, they would do it. Why is that? Because we want the right to exhaust our potential. It doesn't say you have the right to be happy. It says you have the right to pursue happiness. The word pursuit in its essence, I am a word guy, being a songwriter. Pursuit means to be in motion. That means happiness is a moving target. Isn't that interesting? Happiness is a moving target. What I considered happiness in my 20s is different than what I thought in my 30s, and so on and so forth down the line. It changes with time, but as Americans, we have the right to continue to go for it. There's also a real strong parallel between that Declaration of Independence and our Constitution and actually the words of Jesus Christ himself. Mm-hmm. He said, I will make you, the truth will set you free. Speak the truth, it will set you free. And he goes, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. So if he's the truth, he will set you free. Well, what does our Constitution say? And the Declaration of Independence? You have the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have the right to exhaust your God-given potential. So I think that ultimately is why our country was so blessed for so long. And I think now we find ourselves as the most blessed nation in the history of written history of nations, and we have squandered it to such a horrible level, and a lot of people have gotten soft, to your point, and instead of pushing back when they saw it being abused and taken for granted, they didn't, because they never thought it was going to show up in their backyard. They never thought it was going to show up inside my front door in my family. They never thought their kids would be ones acting like that. And now here we are. So I think it's on the shoulders of people like yourself, your organization, me and others. Mm-hmm. We got to stand up now, and we got to be the guys in the 1940s.
It's a moral obligation, too. I mean, it's not merely an opportunity, but we often talk at Heritage, but by that I mean not just those of us who work in D.C., although we're not of D.C., but I'm talking about the thousands, maybe a few million people who are just ordinary Americans who make our work possible. We talk about this cultural inheritance we have. Wherever your people are from, however they got here, whatever church you go to, whatever the differences are, what binds us together is that we ought to be grateful when we wake up each day. And of course, each of us has our own family culture, but by that cultural inheritance, what we're trying to convey is this gratitude that we ought to have. And when you wake up with that gratitude, then regardless of whatever challenges you have that day, you also want to kind of pay it forward, to put it a certain way. And it seems as if one of the things we're just failing to do in this society repeatedly is instill that in kids. Mm-hmm. And it's imperative for parents to do that. It's particularly imperative for dads to do that, and you're outspoken about that too. But what I'm driving at, John, is our institutions, our schools, public schools, which you and I both attended, colleges and universities, these institutions that used to do that aren't doing it anymore. And I'm wondering if we can sort of flip that challenge on its head and say, let's just let them do what they're going to do. We're actually going to build new institutions. Mm-hmm. And you're doing that in part with banking. Mm-hmm. Tell us what the regime, whether it's the banking regime specifically, or whether it's the regime, which I mean sort of broadly, is trying to do to prevent people from starting new banks, or I can talk a little bit about starting new schools.
Yeah, right. If I can take one step back, because you said something really important there. Americans have to realize they stand here in this moment of their lifespan, however long that's going to be. You cannot stand there and convince yourself that you are playing a solo game. You're playing for three spots. I am anyway. The three different things at once. You're playing and working to bestow respect upon your family members who came before you and your countrymen who came before you. You're trying to live up to the highest examples ever in your family or country. And the second part, yes, it's you in the game. This is your name on it. You're the one that's going to be known for how you're doing this stuff, whether you win, lose, or otherwise. Integrity, they're going to know you. And then the biggest one is you were playing and you were working for people who will have your last name that you will never meet. You will never meet them, but they will have the last name of Rich. They will be going down the line and I'll never know them, but they'll know about me. And whatever they know about me, they're looking back at me and going, if I did it right and I really went after it and I held it all together and kept my integrity intact, hopefully they go back and look at the old man's story and they go, we come from people like that. So we got to step up. We got to go, because someday that's going to be us. They're looking back on. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's really the American
generational.
dream, right?
You got to think generationally, and that's how I think. When you walked in the front door of my house here, you might not have seen it. I'll show it to you when you walk out. You'll see my granddaddy's World War II uniform hanging on the wall, next to a picture of him, and then my other grandfather who was in Germany fighting over there, and there are awards and bracelets and dog tags from all kinds of people that I have met in my world of music over the past few decades. And brother, when you walk past that every day and my kids see that, my two boys who were 13 and 14, I walked them over and I said, look at what that says on those dog tags. And they'll read it and go, who is this? I go, I never met him, but his dad gave me these dog tags because his son was a fan of my music. And I don't care if I never met him. Look what he did. That's what allows us to do what we do. And man, they touched that uniform and I go, can you imagine what was going on in his head at 18 years old? And their eyes just get big, and that's what parents have to do, make them go touch history. So when you get to, I had to say that, man, because that's a huge subject.
I'm glad you did.
So it's DNA important in my mind.
We can hang on that, because we've got time to talk about the parallel economy. I just wanted to be sure that this recovering academic didn't forget to ask you about that, because I'm keenly interested in it. This is, when we talk about the American dream, sometimes Americans will define that as like a material security, financial success, and that's certainly part of it. But as we have done what we do at Heritage and try to get into sort of an analysis of that, what they're really saying is along the lines of what you just said, which is that I want to honor the people who came before me, however long they were in this country. And I want to do the right things here and also have the ability to live life as I would like to live life, virtuously, without the government being in the way. But there's always, either explicitly, although often implicitly, this sense of posterity, the sense of the future, which not coincidentally our founders had when they took the risk for the Declaration of the Constitution. In fact, they would say, as you know, that what they were doing wasn't really inspired by their concern about the current generation. It was about all the generations of people, Americans and otherwise, they would never meet.
Yeah, people with their last name that they would never meet.
Exactly.
Right, exactly right. Is God limitless? Is he?
Yeah.
Says he is. He is. He is limitless. Are we created in the image of God? So we are created in the image of a limitless being. We are in the image of that. We're not him, but we're in his image. To me, that lines up directly with the pursuit of happiness. That all any human being really ever wants is not to become a millionaire. It's not to have everything they want. It's to be given the opportunity to go out there and see what they can do on their own. Get out of my way. Let me go. Just turn me loose. I don't care where you live on this planet or what your religion is or what color you are or how you voted or anything else. The human condition, you are created by the master and he is limitless and we're in his image, is to turn me loose and let me be limitless. Let me go after it as much as I am capable of doing. That's all I really want. So happiness to me is just the ability to go do that. It's as simple as that. That's the American dream. I don't know if you ever heard it put that way. That's how I look at it. The dream is just to leave me alone and let me go.
I agree entirely. And our purpose tonight, recording this in the evening, is not to dissect the recent presidential election, although we can talk about whatever we want.
Or we could just grab a couple of hammers and hit each other with them for a while. That would also feel about the same. Or hit yourself with it.
Just, that's what I was thinking.
Hey, you want to talk about yeah.
But the one good facet of that.
Do people joke around with you in these podcasts?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank goodness.
In fact, it's required. I told you, as I could see already, what you're trying to do is get me off of my train of thought, which is pretty easy.
I'm just seeing how good you are, man.
Which is pretty bad.
Doctor.
Yeah. I insist on that, by the way. As I came in the door, I was thinking, man, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. But I told you a story about being at Princeton University recently, and the students who were there were respectful. There were some liberal students there. To their credit, they asked great questions, but they asked me for advice at the end, and I think they were expecting me to give them like really heady intellectual advice. And I said, remember to laugh, remember to have a sense of humor. And we used to be able to do that with our politics when our politics were better. But on that point, it seems as if one facet of not beating ourselves over the head with a hammer about the presidential election would be, it really came down to common sense. It really came down to a majority of Americans saying, one side is telling me that X is Y, that grocery prices haven't gone up, that boys are girls and girls are boys, and really ultimately what the Trump campaign did in the last part of it was just say, trust what you know to be true. So in other words, in spite of all of the efforts by one side to tell us that truth isn't truth, that there are multiple truths, that you can still trust the American people to pursue truth and to pursue the American dream.
Yeah, thank goodness. I was so proud of the Democrat voters that came across, the independent voters that came across, the minority voters that had never voted ever, a lot of times at all, much less for a conservative. They're the reason he won. Yeah, the base, Trump's base showed up, we showed up, but without them showing up, man, they'd still be counting votes in Pennsylvania, even though they are to a certain degree.
They're trying.
For the president. They would still be doing that, and they were unable to do it because so many people, and now they just can't understand why we weren't able to brainwash these people. I don't understand how else should we have said it to fool them into giving us 4 more years. Isn't it something to see the curtain get ripped back on them, and they're just standing there with, Mika and Joe standing there like fools, and they just can't understand why we couldn't talk them into it again. And I go, well, you know what? Because people only have a certain threshold of pain. That's why.
It's human nature.
And when that pain level gets high enough, they don't care what you tell them. All they know is this hurts, and I want it to stop.
Yeah.
And that's why they picked Trump.
Humility comes from many sources. And what I learned back when I was a professor, and I certainly learned it in what I'm doing now, is that the radical left always overreaches. They always overplay their hand. Now, sometimes we have to endure a lot of pain. We, on the right, have to endure a lot of pain, and we have in the last few years under their administration, but they ultimately overplay their hand. One of the things that doesn't always happen, however, is that the right decides they're going to call them. Too often, especially in DC and some state capitals, the political right, conservative politicians, or at least politicians who purport to be conservatives, decide they aren't going to match them. And I think what Trump in particular is teaching us, but even J.D. Vance, who's got a different personality but the same resolve, is stand up to him. and stand up to them.
Bullies hate that.
Exactly. They hate it on the schoolyard. They hate it in politics. And I guess I'm just hopeful that between their example and the truth of what you just said about the American dream, that tens of millions of Americans who've sort of been sitting on the sidelines don't just say, I voted in the last election for the right side, but that I want to participate in rebuilding my country.
I think at the end of this 4 years, if Trump has delivered, and I believe he will, I don't think you lose any of those voters. As a matter of fact, I think you pick up even more of them. The ones that were on the fence going, I don't know, and they wind up voting the other way. And their friends are like, okay, watch what's going to happen. They're going to see life improve.
Yeah.
And then I think you have even more. I think the left has a real problem right now because the word is traveling through those circles of people that never voted conservative. And it's a real conversation. I mean, for real.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends, even in the music industry, who aren't struggling or anything like that, especially the creatives that saw how much censorship was coming down. For instance, comedians I'm friends with having to pick and choose what jokes they're going to say because they don't want to get kicked off of Netflix, don't want to lose their special, whatever. And they're like, these are like Bernie Sanders supporters, some of these people. And they said, I'm going to have to vote for Trump. I said, you're kidding me. You are voting for Trump. I'm going to have to. Why? Because this is not America. It's not freedom of speech. I cannot deal with this anymore. I mean, that's how far out they got that Bernie Sanders supporters were voting for Trump. But freedom, I don't think freedom has a party. I really don't.
No,
freedom is a human thing. I'm just a human being. Leave me alone and let me do what I want to do.
It's bigger than both parties.
It's bigger than all. It's bigger than the whole thing. Yeah, exactly right.
So that leads me to this question: have you always found it easy, although I know that it was natural for you, like when you were getting started in your music career, singing and songwriting, to speak the truth as vocally as you do now? Or has there been an evolution in the industry, or maybe it comes from age? I think you and I are exactly the same age, which is to say we're roughly a half century old.
We should have a push-up contest when this is over with. Just see how we're doing.
Challenge accepted.
There you go.
You remember what I just asked you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would speak the truth when it didn't cost me.
Yeah, which is natural, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're coming up through the music industry with a bunch of liberal record label people, and my American dream was I wanted to be on country radio and write hit songs and play the Grand Ole Opry and win CMA awards and on and on and on. Well, in that position of your life where you haven't gotten to that level yet, you got a choice to make. Am I going to come out here guns blazing and lose my record deal and get kicked out of here and have to go do something else the rest of my life, or just bite your tongue, go play the game, have your hits, build your career? Which one are you going to do? Well, so that's what I did for a very long time until about 5-6 years ago when my boys started getting old enough to realize what was going on. And I said, I do not want to be the guy yelling at the TV and then suit up and walk down the red carpet with the exact same people, type of people that I was literally just yelling at the house. Because what does that make Dad? Good old Dad is a what? He's a hypocrite. He's a hypocrite. And what else is Dad? Dad's the blueprint. So if that's how Dad dealt with it, then when we get out on our own and it gets too tough or we might lose something, we'll just roll over too to keep making that money. We'll just roll over too. And I got so sick to my stomach even contemplating that they could be that way, and that would be my fault if they did that. I said, that's it. I'm done. And I stood up and went, now I'm coming for you. And I started saying that's when you probably got on your radar. And I started saying exactly what I thought loudly in front of millions of people. And guess what? No more record deal, no more publishing deal, no more publicity deal, no more awards, no more radio play, none of that. All that's gone.
Yeah.
You will not find one of my new songs being played at country radio, even though it might be sitting number one on the download chart. They won't touch it. And that's fine. It goes back to what we said earlier. If those people thought well of me and still wanted to play ball with me, then I'm not doing this correctly. This is not a game anymore. This is such serious business, not only for us alive today, but like you said, our posterity coming down the road. Man, if we don't jerk a knot in their chain right now, and I mean hard, I mean just like Trump did with this election, and we ain't done, and now come in behind that and start cleaning this mess up, it'll just go right back to the same situation whenever they get another Democrat in that White House.
Yeah, it's just going to be this typical swinging of the pendulum that we're living through.
And the thing culture's missing the most is courage. They're scared to death. They're scared to death something's going to be said about them or something's going to happen at my job, and I just don't know. I'll let somebody else say it. I'll let John go say it. Yeah, that's why I follow him on X, because he'll say it, and I'll retweet that. Maybe I'll retweet it. But that's got to be over with now. Every mom, every dad, every young person that knows what they believe to be true has got to come out like this and do not back up. Because what happens when you do that? You become Mika and Joe on TV going, we don't know what happened. And they look like idiots. We've reached back out to Mar-a-Lago. How pathetic is that? So that's good. That means they can be beaten.
Yep.
They can lose.
That's
it's
what
like
winning
Rocky.
looks like.
It was like when Rocky hit Drago. You know, he finally hit the Russian, and a tiny little drop of blood, and he goes, see, Rocky bleeds. He's just a man. He bleeds just like a man. And Rocky went, oh, crap. I made his nose bleed. I think I can beat this guy. I feel like that's where America's at right now.
Wow, what a powerful image. Powerful image. By the way, you were on my radar well before you started being canceled, because my wife and I have been big fans of your music. And I say that not to blow smoke, but to say that, I'll tell you a story, that when you stepped out and started speaking vocally about politics and culture and the state of the country, I said, Michelle, John Rich is stepping out and doing that. You know he's going to get canceled. She said, it doesn't surprise you that he's the one doing it. So there's something about, and I'm truly not blowing smoke, just got a guy, that there was something about how you went about your business, perhaps your songwriting, the songs themselves, the sometimes overtly, explicitly wonderful pro-America message that wasn't a surprise to your fans. And now you've got fans who probably aren't even country music fans. And that speaks a lot about your encouragement you just gave, the charge really you just gave, to people listening, watching, following you on X, for them to do the same thing in their own industry. It's possible in any industry.
What if George Washington had been afraid? What if Teddy Roosevelt had been afraid? Yeah. What if Ronald Reagan had been afraid? Can you imagine? There's a very famous scripture. It says, God does not give us a spirit of fear. He does not give us a spirit of fear. If you're experiencing a spirit of fear for anything other than fear of Him, now you got to fear Him. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But He does not give us a spirit of fear. If you feel that, that's coming from your own flesh. That's coming from somebody putting fear on you. You got to ask Him to take that off of you and go, I do not want to be fearful of these people or what might happen to me if I say or do the right thing. And guess what? He will. And then you become a real problem for the bad guys, a serious problem. One thing in the past several years, I know you've watched me do it, is I used to always think, if somebody called themselves a Republican, they must be one of the good guys, by default. I don't care who it is. They got an R, I'm behind them, I'm in. I was like that till just a handful of years ago. That's how I thought. And I think one of the great things that happened with Trump is him coming in, exposed who is who. And you start seeing Republicans coming at him with everything they got, attacking him, cutting him up, messing up his agenda. We still got some of them in there we're worried about right now.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, right. Me too. But guess what? The American people have noticed it. I would say the vast majority now do not just by default say, if somebody's a Republican, if they're a conservative, thumbs up. They're going, I don't know, let me read about this guy for a minute. And then they watch him do an interview, or they watch how they vote. They watch what they say behind closed doors. They watch how they maneuver, and they go, slime ball, rhino, no. I think that one's okay. We'll see. We'll wait on this one. That's our posture now in public discourse as conservatives, that we do not, and guess what? I would rather deal with a straight-ahead crazy Democrat than a Judas Republican. Who's Judas? One of Jesus' own men turned him in. Not the enemy, one of his buddies turned him in.
And the Judases in the modern Republican Party are very savvy.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Just like Judas.
Judas was very slick too. Yeah, but it didn't work out in the end. But the point is, Jesus was betrayed by his own man. So if you want to, look at the situation of conservatives and they go, I'm one of you, I'm from this state, I do this and that, and they put on their ball cap just for the time the election's going, in their plaid shirt, and they swinging an axe or shooting a rifle. I'm just like you, I'm driving a pickup truck. Give me a break. That does not work anymore, by the way. It does not work.
You mean to
Thank
tell
God.
me Yeah, I know. You mean to tell me if you put on a flannel shirt and you drive a pickup truck, that's not going to sell you on someone being a
No, I'm
conservative?
sorry, Mitch McConnell, that's not going to work.
We were thinking about
I'm sorry,
the same
Mitch.
guy.
Remember that? He put on his cap and his flannel shirt, and he begging Trump, begging him to get him across the finish line because he was going to lose. He was going to lose that Senate race. And begging Trump, and then when Trump finally gets in there, and Mitch finally gets in there, what does Mitch McConnell do? Everything he can to derail Donald Trump.
And that's how Judas politicians operate.
Right, which is exactly right. And our first conversation, that's how it went. Because we were in the middle of all that, and I said...
You were a little hot that day.
I said, I'll just tell the audience, I said, I don't like seeing Heritage Foundation platforming people who are liars. High school diploma, here it comes. They are lying to us. They're telling us they're one thing, and we vote them in, and then they turn around and turn us into fish bait in the back room, laughing and yucking it up with their Democrat buddies, smoking cigars, going, yeah, we got them again. I said, we're done with that. And so to your credit, you said, hey, yes, we need to turn this boat and get back on dealing with the real McCoys is what we called them. And you know what? You've done that. That's why you would have asked me 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said, I'm busy. Because I was really disgusted, not just with you guys, but the whole system of it, that all these decades, conservatives have been played by politicians and people in power, playing us, placating us, and we've been falling for it. And like I said, that to me is one of the greatest results of Trump being president, is that it forced the Judases out into the sunlight where we could all see them.
And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Tell me what you think.
You're seeing it right now with the confirmation process.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Spotlight time. You're on. 3, 2, 1, action. Oh, yeah, here we go. And I texted John Thune. I texted his phone, Senator Thune, and it was a respectful message, but it was firm. And I said, I'm speaking on behalf of millions of us right now, and you know that to be true. And here's what I told him. I said, do not stand in the way of the man we just put in the White House. Allow him what he wants to have. Allow his people through. This is what we want. Thank you. He didn't text back.
Well,
maybe he will. Maybe he'll surprise us.
I was just about to say, we can be hopeful and prayerful that he does. And I can tell you that we at Heritage Foundation and Heritage Action, our more political arm, just announced this day that you and I are recording this, that we're doing a massive campaign to help Mr. Trump get his guys and gals confirmed.
Good.
And to your point, the focus has to be on 8 or 9 or 10 Republicans whose votes are not confident. And that has to change. The American people have spoken. And if there are 8 or 9 or 10 Republicans who simply haven't gotten the memo, that proves exactly what you're saying. And even though we've made progress in that regard over the last several years, there's more progress to be made.
Can you imagine if they hang him up, if that 8 to 10 or 12 Republicans hang up his agenda again? Can you imagine?
All of this is for naught. All of this is for naught.
Other than executive authority.
Yeah.
Right.
And their political careers are very much in jeopardy because the American people, particularly the center-right, are tired of this kind of duplicity, this hypocrisy. It's just like you're
Maybe I'll move to South Dakota and buy a little farm up there and I'll run against him.
Oh, brother.
That'd be a fun one.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
I think that's the kind of things that would happen. I think they need to really think about it. And, the Senate, they look at their positions as just total autonomy. And I guess in a sense they have that because they can literally throw a monkey wrench right into the wheels if they want to. But everybody's watching. Everybody, even people that don't ever watch, are watching that.
And I will tell you the good news, because it's one of the things that I try to do in these conversations is talk about reality very truthfully, even when it hurts, just like you and I did in our first conversation. But then what are the solutions to that? And what are the reasons for real substantive optimism? And they are there. Just in the short time I've been at Heritage, I have seen a growing number of Republican senators who are aligned with what not just you and I think, but our people, this big movement of Trump Vance people, led by Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, J.D. Vance, thank God he's going to be vice president, but incoming senators, Jim Banks, Bernie Moreno, I mean, several others.
Bernie seems like the real deal.
He is the real deal. Eric Schmidt from Missouri, Roger Marshall from Kansas. I can keep going on and on and on. But all of that to say, there's reason for real optimism. So we need to talk about banking.
Yeah. You brought that up earlier. And we
you
went
got
on.
me, well, not off my game. This has been a great conversation.
I didn't say off your game.
Maybe you should host this show.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, my
in
staff
all my
back
spare
there.
time,
Yeah, right.
I will do that.
Yeah. Although I
Count
can't
me
sing,
in.
so I
I'm
can't do
in.
what you do.
I'll be your host.
I really want to get to banking because I think it's another example of how the regime has tried to push out great things like community banks. And you've decided, short of moving to South Dakota and moving for governor, that you're going to participate in the parallel
Senator. I would run for
economy.
senator against John Thune. I have a lot of friends in South Dakota too. Who knows? I might give him a run. He might smash me. I don't know. But it cost him a lot of money to try to beat me.
I think we just made the news, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Banking, Old Glory Bank.
Yeah.
We talk about specifically, but even more, and I want you to do that. But even more broadly, what's at stake with our banking system, and how is this emblematic of this conversation thread we're having?
You remember the truckers' protest in Canada? Horrible. I mean, people getting stomped by horses.
Very well.
Trudeau is literally turning into an actual dictator in front of your very eyes. And the only way he could break that thing up was he called all the federal banks in Canada and said, freeze their bank accounts. Freeze every trucker's bank account. Freeze the bank accounts of the trucking companies they drive for. Freeze the bank accounts of tow truck drivers and the companies they drive for if they refuse to tow the trucks. Keep freezing them until they leave. And the federal bank said, yes, sir. And that's what they did. They froze their bank accounts, and that's what ended the truckers' protest. So I'm watching that. Dr. Ben Carson's watching that. Larry Elder, Mary Fallon, Governor Fallon from Oklahoma, and a bunch of other people are watching this situation going, this is going to happen in America if you give them enough time and you get a bad enough guy or girl in office. They're going to come after conservative businesses, personal. They're going to come after you. They'll just freeze your bank account. We cannot allow that to happen. I remember saying this to them. I said, everybody wants to run for the hills, but the enemy owns all the hills. What hill are you going to run to? We got to build new hills for people to run to. And that's where this conversation started getting really serious. We said, we got to build a new banking platform that promises customers to never cancel them or hurt them for exercising their constitutional rights. I said, now that's a pathetic thing to have to put down that's your marketing? We're not going to cancel you because you exercise your constitutional rights?
It is pathetic.
It is pathetic, but that's where we're at. And so we said, okay, Old Glory Bank, let's do it. So a bunch of guys from the banking world that left that woke banking system, that federally controlled banking system, even though it's publicly traded, they left, said, we know how to build a bank, we know how to do it correctly, let's go. And so we did. And so you look up now and there's a lot of people at Old Glory Bank, growing by leaps and bounds every month. And people are coming there. Some of them are leaving their bank altogether, and some of them are saying, I'm going to open an Old Glory Bank and put my savings in there as a firewall against somebody coming after me at some point. I went to the wrong rally. I made a wrong social media post. That could happen.
Which I'll just tell you, in full disclosure, and there's no interest that I have in this other than wanting y'all to succeed. That's what my family and I have done because of the potential for us to be canceled because of the job that I do.
You're a huge target. Huge target. Dinesh D'Souza, all his credit cards through Chase were just turned off all of a sudden when he's over in Europe on a documentary run or something like that. People have the misunderstanding about the relationship between American banks and the federal government. People think that if the federal government tells a bank to freeze that person's bank account, that the bank has to do it. The bank does not have to do that. The bank can say, can you show me any evidence of them committing a crime with what's in this bank account? Are they doing something that's a national security threat? Are they a terrorist? Like, can you show me something? They can say, and if they go, no, we don't have any of that, we just want to turn them off. The bank can then go, okay, we'll see you in court. We're not turning anything off. But they don't do that. They play ball.
Cowardice, once again.
They play ball with the federal government. Now, I will say this. They just lost a lot of power, the left did, when Trump came in. They lost a lot of their levers. So I would anticipate the levers that they do still have, they are going to be pulling them things 10 times harder than you ever saw, ever. And banking is going to be one of them. It wouldn't shock me if they didn't turn off Donald Trump's bank account at some point. While he's the president, they kicked him off social media while he was president.
They've tried everything else.
Why not turn his bank account off? Yeah, exactly, everything else. So Old Glory Bank, I believe, is a very critical thing to do well. It needs to exist. People need to know that it's there. You don't need to move all your money over there unless you want to. You couldn't be just fine. We do small business loans now, mortgages. It's growing that fast. But have something else in place, man, because I'm telling you, even though we won that election, we are not out of the woods at all. Matter of fact, explain this to me, the body language of this and how this makes any sense. How is it that you can scream that this man is Hitler at the top of your lungs for months on end, and anybody that supports him are Nazis, and they're just going off on this? And 48 hours after he wins the election, they come out on stage with grins on their faces and their hands like this and go, "We congratulated the president-elect on his victory, and we look forward to working with him in a bipartisan manner." I saw that and went, that does not make sense. That does not line up at all. And I really don't like the grin, and I really don't like the wink. I don't like the body language at all. What do you people got in mind right now? What are y'all planning on doing? Because you don't look that upset.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
Did you see the same thing?
Oh, totally. And
explain that. You can't go from Hitler to that.
No, that's right.
Hours.
The only explanation is that they are burrowing in, some of these federal bureaucrats, burrowing into from a political appointee position in the government to something that's protected by civil service that's happening as we sit here. And that's going to make doubly or triply difficult the effort that Trump and Vance have to dismantle the administrative state. So this is precisely
like
what they're doing. Oh, totally.
They're ticks.
They are. It's a great example.
I mean, right. Just inside the hairline where you can't see them. They're just sucking your blood the whole time.
You ought to be a songwriter.
They're ticks. Maybe that's my next song. I don't know, a bunch of ticks.
Two final questions.
Right.
You've been generous with your time. The first is, you don't know this, but I know this about you. We share a love for Johnny Cash and his music.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's my oldest son's name, Cash.
That's right.
That's right, ladies, Cash Rich. You'll have to meet him someday.
What's your favorite Johnny Cash song?
I would first off say that the reason he is my favorite singer-songwriter of all time is Johnny Cash conveyed more emotion and messaging with fewer words per square inch than any songwriter ever lived. The way he wrote a song was not dissimilar to the way David would have written a psalm or Solomon would have written a proverb, where there is so much packed in to a if you write down all the lyrics to basically any Johnny Cash song, it ain't even half a page. But the impact, every single word was just a hammer, the way he would hit you. So he has always been, to me, the absolute high bar of what an American singer-songwriter should be. I will never reach that bar, but that's why I keep his stuff around me. I named my son Cash because I think the guy had one of the greatest hearts, one of the greatest comeback stories. He was a devoted Christian, and he did not care what you thought when he would do an interview. He was Johnny Cash. What are you going to say? He's Johnny Cash. A lot of his songs are my favorites for different reasons. I Walk the Line is a great one because I look at myself as a guy, I try to walk the line. Nobody's perfect, but I really try. When he says, basically, because you're mine, I walk the line. I walk the line because you belong to me. I belong to you, so I walk the line. That's it. What does that mean? I mean, there's like a whole book in that one line.
There is?
Oh, absolutely, man. He was somewhat prophetic in some of his lyrics. Later on in his life, if you want to look up some songs that'll really, really tear you up, go listen to When the Man Comes Around. You ever heard that one?
I have heard that one, although I've not listened to it in a long time.
Oh, go listen to it now in 2024 and see how it hits you. He's talking about Jesus coming back.
Yeah, it's been years since I've listened to it.
Oh, When the Man Comes Around. Ooh, it'll all be over when the man comes around. That led me, those kind of songs led me to write songs like Revelation, which was the last song I put
And I want to
out.
be sure you mentioned that because it's powerful.
Yeah, that song hits. I don't know how Johnny Cash would have written that subject better than I did, no doubt. But I was creeping up into that realm of those lyrics. Just every single line seemed to matter. And that song, again, never played on a radio station, but has tens of millions of views now. It led to Tucker Carlson wanting to interview me about it, which led to Jordan Peterson wanting to interview me about it, which led to Russell Brand wanting to interview me about it, and everybody else wanted to talk about prophecy, the book of Revelation, where the country is right now, and tell me what in the world's going on with this song that's putting all this together.
Yeah.
What an important conversation. Might be the most important conversation. Steps above politics, steps above personality, steps above culture, everything. What does the book say about what we're looking at right now?
Amen.
So I really appreciated the opportunity to pop that song out there.
Well, and when you sent that to me, I watched the video immediately, and I sat down with my wife and our teenage girls, and we watched the video, and we all had tears in our eyes. It's that powerful, and because of the truth that's in there. So let's take Johnny Cash, I Walk the Line. The last question that I have the custom of asking guests is, why, in spite of all the challenges in America, did you wake up hopeful today? You've covered some of that today. But what if Americans are sitting around or watching this, listening to this, and they say, okay, John and Kevin, I get it. We won the election, things are better, but I can go back to do what I'm doing. Why do they need to walk the line?
Because the devil never sleeps. Ever. He will fight to the very end. He will fight until Jesus himself steps foot back on this planet. He will do everything he can, and he will be successful at a lot of it. And so people have to remember he never sleeps, and his people never sleep. People that really worship him, and there's a lot of them that are way more devout to him than a lot of Christians are devout to Jesus Christ. That's a fact. He never sleeps. He never gives up. And the only way we have a chance at all is if you've given your life to Jesus Christ, you have submitted your will to him, the Holy Spirit is inside of you, and you ask the Holy Spirit to be a shield, a weapon, and every other thing in your arsenal that you need. And then, and only then, can you effectively go forward and do what it is he's told you to go do. He will shield you. He will swing you. It says, be a weapon in the hand of God. It said, I will use you as a weapon in my hand to tear down the gates of hell itself. A weapon can't swing itself. You ever seen an axe swing itself? No. The strong man has to pick the axe up, but the axe has to be sharp and the axe has to be ready. And when he wields that axe, things happen. We are supposed to be that in God's hands, just sitting there on the sidelines going, you tell me when. I'm sharpening myself up. Let's go. Christians should be on the offense. Christians should not be on the defense. Jesus Christ walked right into the middle of all of them and told them the truth. They did not crucify and murder him because of something he did. Because of things that he said is why. Freedom of speech got Jesus Christ killed. Think about that for a minute. So if they persecuted him, what more are they going to do to us? We're not him. We're just his followers. So I tell all Christians that are in America, you better not get comfortable. Be grateful for what has happened. Thank him for that. But you're just getting started in this whole thing. The devil never sleeps, and neither should we.
From the lips of the son of the prison preacher to God's ears, thank you. John Rich, you're a great American.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for everything you do.
Yeah, man, keep it up.
We will. I told you you'd enjoy this episode. I tell you that every time. It's true every time. It's particularly true with this great conversation with John Rich. Keep your chins up. Not only are we winning, we're going to take back this country. God bless you.
The Kevin Roberts Show is brought to you by more than 10 million supporters of the Heritage Foundation. The executive producer is Crystal Kate Bonham. Sound design by Lauren Evans, Mark Guiney, Tim Kennedy, and Joseph Fonsbakowski. For more information and to subscribe, please visit heritage.org.